أهلا بيكم أعزائي طلبة وطالبات المرحلة الإعدادية Prep 3 في مادة ساينس تحت رعاية وإشراف وزارة التربية والتعليم. لو نفتكر المرة اللي فاتت we have finished the lesson of motion in one direction. طيب what did we study? We studied the types of speed اللي هم كانوا إيه؟ يلا بينا كده نعمل quick recap. regular speed, irregular speed, average speed and relative speed. Correct. طيب today we're going to study a brand new lesson اسمه graphical representation for physical quantities. يلا بينا علشان نبتدي الليسون بتاعنا ونشوف هنعمل ايه. Today's lesson اسمه graphical representation of moving in one direction. طيب what are we going to study in this lesson? We will learn how to make graphs, how to draw graphs and what is the function of the graph. Why do we use them? طيب يلا بينا كده let's read together. To understand many of the physical phenomena, we have to use mathematical relations between different variables. What does this mean? يعني for example مثلا how do we conclude the speed? في mathematical relation for the speed اللي هي equals distance over time. Correct? طيب ده احنا خدناه في الليسون اللي فات وعارفينه كويس جدا. الجراف اللي قدامنا ده let's read the graph كده and try to understand it. If you notice احنا عندنا one of the axes of the graph مكتوب عليها speed, the other one مكتوب عليها time. طيب and we have one line starting from O and O is called O because it is called the origin point. Then to A, then from A to B. Then from B to C, then from C to D, D to E and E to F. طبعا if we are trying to read this graph دلوقتي مش هنفهم منه أي حاجة. This lesson will teach you how to read a graph and how to understand the graph and how to deduce the relation or the number or the outcome out of a graph. طيب again my question احنا ليه بندرس graphs؟ ليه؟ علشان أعمل experiment I have to put the results in a table. بعد كده أنا هاخد التيبل ده according to the numbers in the table هنرسم الجراف. Why do we do this? Uses of graphical relations. ليه الساينتستس بيفكروا في الجرافس؟ أول حاجة describe the physical phenomenon. يعني دلوقتي I have a physical phenomenon. For example, speed equals distance over time. I don't know the relation between distance and time. طيب what do I do? أول حاجة أعملها إن أنا أرسم graph. Drawing a graph will give me the space to understand the relation between distance and time. طيب let's see the second reason. Predict the relation between physical quantities. What does this mean? For example مثلا from the last lesson إحنا قلنا speed equal distance over time. When the speed increases, it means that the distance that I covered also increased. In this case, what do we say about the relation? Yes, it's a direct relation. طيب also when the speed increases, إيه اللي بيحصل للtime? Time decreases. If I'm going somewhere and my speed is very high, I will take shorter time. طيب when I draw the graph, I will deduce the relation between speed and time easily. This is what is meant by predict the relation between physical quantities. طيب does this only apply on the speed, distance and time? لا طبعا. Any physical quantity in the world I can represent in a graph to deduce the relation between different physical quantities. طيب what is the third reason? Understand practical results. What does this mean? Imagine that I'm having an experiment in the lab or I am experimenting on something, but I don't know the relation between the results of the experiment. Making a graph or drawing a graph will make it very easy to understand the relation between the outcome that I have from the results. طيب هو any experiment in the whole world أول حاجة إحنا بنعمل إيه؟ بنجمع data. Then the procedure يعني الخطوات أو الsteps اللي أنا هعملها في أي experiment. Then I have results. طيب say I have a lot of results in front of me but I don't know the relation between them. يعني مثلا when something increases another thing decreases and vice versa. How do I deduce this relation? أسهل حاجة a table or a graph. So let's have a quick recap كده. What are the 3 reasons اللي بيهم أنا بستخدم graphs or table؟ أول حاجة describe the physical phenomenon. هتبقى أسهل بكتير to express a physical phenomenon using a graph or using a table. Number 2, predict the relation between physical quantities زي مثلا direct relation, inverse relation. Number 3, understand the practical results. Graphical representation of motion in straight line. واحدة واحدة كده دلوقتي مع بعض احنا هنتعلم how to draw a graph and how to find the relation between speed, distance and time or any physical quantity. Graphical relation represents by in front of you احنا عندنا في axis مكتوب عليه x و another axis مكتوب عليه y. x is the horizontal axis and y is the vertical axis. بالظبط كده. So the name of the horizontal axis is x. The name of the vertical axis is y. So in the questions لو هو قال لي x axis أنا هبقى عارفة إن هو the horizontal line. لو قال لي y axis أنا هبقى عارفة إن هو the vertical line. طيب this is the first step. تعالوا كده مع بعض نشوف فيديو بيشرح ببساطة جدا how to draw a graph. يلا بينا نشوف الفيديو مع بعض.
In this experiment, we will learn how to represent the regular speed of an object graphically. We will use a toy car operated by a battery, a smooth wooden board about 2 meters long, a metric ruler or strip, a stopwatch, a colored pen or marker. First, place the wooden board in a horizontal position. Second, put 2 marks on the wooden board at known distances, as shown in the following figure. Third, operate the toy car and record the time necessary to cover this distance. Then, repeat the previous steps by changing the 2 marks that represent the distance and record the time necessary to cover the new distance. Now, write your results in the following table. In each trial, calculate the speed of the car by using the following equation. Afterwards, place the readings of the table in a dots format. To illustrate the relation between distance and time, you can draw a graph of the measured quantities as follows. Draw the distance on the vertical axis, y-axis, and time on the horizontal axis, x-axis, as shown in the opposite graph. To illustrate the relation between speed and time, you can get a graphic relation, as shown in the opposite figure. Draw the speed on the vertical axis, the y-axis, and time on the horizontal axis, x-axis, as shown in the opposite graph. Watch the video to get the observation of this experiment.
Let's see how to represent the movement of this car graphically. This is a car that starts moving from rest. After half a minute, its speed becomes 20 kilometers per hour. After another half a minute, its speed increases to 40 kilometers per hour. Then, the car's speed is decreased to 10 kilometers per hour in the second minute, and it stops completely after another minute. It is possible to represent the movement of this car graphically. As we see, the opposite graph represents the relation between speed and time of a moving car.
From this experiment, we conclude that the distance-time graph for regular motion at constant speed is represented as a straight line through the point of origin, and the speed-time graph from an object moving with regular motion at a constant speed is represented as the straight line passing parallel to the x-axis, which represents the time, as shown.
طيب, what did we see in this video? She was trying to teach us how to draw a graph. طيب, what did she do? أول حاجة, she performed an experiment. كانت a walking car or a car that is in motion. What do? We record different distances and different times for this car. or the distance and the time needed to cover this distance. طيب, then what did we do? We wrote all of the results in a table. After this, what did we do? خدنا بقى these numbers that I put in a table and drew the graph. If you have noticed, دايما horizontal axis اللي هو x axis كان بيبقى عليه time. بالظبط كده. And the vertical axis which is the y axis كان دايما بيبقى عليه either distance or the speed. So again, we always place time on the horizontal axis which is the x axis. طيب, let's remember كده عملت ايه تاني في الاكسبيرمنت دي. What happened? تمام, after recording the results we started to plot the dots. We have the d axis which is the y axis, the vertical one, and exactly the horizontal axis which is the t axis, the time one. Then we started plotting the dots for distance and time. Then eventually what do? We just connect between these dots. After connecting between these dots, what did we find? We found that the car that is moving in a constant speed, which means it covers equal distances at equal periods of time. الجراف بتاعها كان عامل ازاي؟ It was a straight line passing by the origin point. If you remember, I said to you in the beginning of the session that the origin point is the 0 point. So it was a straight line passing by the origin point. طيب, let's have an example to try to understand this more. Use the table to draw a graph to show the relation between distance and time, speed and time. So, the two types of graphs that I have for the uniform speed are graph اسمه distance time graph. The second one is called speed time graph. طيب, if I told you that we always place the time graph on the horizontal axis x, so where do we place d or speed? Yes, exactly, in the vertical axis. بالظبط كده. Let's see. And then هنا table. Let's read the table very quickly. This is the number of the trials. Covered distance, we have different distances and the time needed, and the speed is calculated for every one of them. Eventually we find that the speed is constant. Why? It's the same. So what we're going to do now is that we're going to represent a uniform speed. يلا بينا نشوف ازاي. أول حاجة, we drew the table with the way that we have learned. هنا, what do we place in the vertical line? What do we place? Exactly, the speed. And what do we place on the horizontal line اللي هو ال x-axis? Time. Time will always be in the bottom, in the horizontal. طيب, what do we do next? We start to place the dots. Okay, what is the first value of the first trial for the speed? كانت ايه؟ 0.8 بالظبط كده. طبعا I will have this graph numerized أو على الأقل محطوط كده in this table, وإحنا هنحط numbers according للvalue اللي عندي. طيب, so the first value was 0.8. طيب, the second one, how was it? برضو 0.8. The third, 0.8. The fourth, the same. ليه? Because it's a uniform speed. شوفوا كده, what is the result? تمام, because the speed did not change. يعني in the first second it was 0.8. لحد the fifth second it was also 0.8. So how do we draw the line? بس connect between the dots that we have plotted in place. هتديني ايه? Exactly, هتديني straight line which is parallel to the x-axis. الله, is it different than the other graph اللي هو كان distance time graph? طبعا. Distance time graph, in order to represent the uniform speed, can straight line passing by the origin point. لكن if I have changed the graph into speed time graph instead, هنلاقي the result is a straight line parallel to the horizontal axis. طيب, let's understand this more. طيب, the previous example was how to represent the speed time graph for the uniform speed. طيب if the graph is distance time graph, which means distance is on the vertical axis and time is on the horizontal axis, what do we do? Like this graph, D is on the vertical axis and T is on the horizontal axis. How to represent it? زي ما احنا شايفين كده, it's a straight line passing by the origin point. طيب ليه حصل كده؟ Because the relation distance over time is constant, which means when the distance increases, the time increases. بالظبط. So this straight line expresses the relation between distance and time as distance increases, time increases with it. اللي هو the same relation of speed equal distance over time. This is why when we draw a graph for distance time graph to represent the uniform speed, it's a straight line passing by the origin point. طيب what is the difference between this graph and the other graph اللي هو كان speed time graph? The speed was constant, so it never changed. فعلشان كده the graph اداني ايه؟ straight line parallel to the بالظبط كده horizontal axis. طيب so straight line passing through the rest point أو zero point أو origin point و uniform speed أو constant speed. This is how to represent it. يلا بينا نكمل. طيب let's watch this video for another experiment. نشوفها كده مع بعض, بعد كده هنعلق عليها سوا.
Graphs and their uses, Part 1. Let us try to understand the motion of Rajesh's bus by plotting the distance time graph. In the graph, time is taken on the x-axis and distance on the y-axis. Now, 1. We can find the position of Rajesh's bus at any time between 9:30 a.m. to 11 a.m. from the graph. For example, at 10:10 a.m., the bus is at a distance of about 36 kilometers. Point A on the graph, corresponding to time 10:10 a.m., would give this information. 2. The distance time graph is a straight line, indicating the motion of the bus to be uniform. Thus, the graph also tells us about the type of motion. 3. The distance traveled by the bus between 9:30 to 10 a.m. is equal to the length of line BC. Now, speed is the distance traveled upon time taken. Speed is equal to BC upon AB. This ratio of BC divided by AB is also called slope of the line. Thus, for uniform motion, speed is equal to slope of the distance time graph. Speed of the bus is equal to 20 kilometers upon 30 minutes, that is, equal to 20 kilometers upon 0.5 hour, which is equal to 40 kilometers per hour.
طيب ايه اللي حصل دلوقتي؟ It was a very simple experiment. ايه اللي عملناه باختصار شديد؟ We calculated the values of distance and the values of time. طيب how to get the speed out of this. لما نطلع على البورد هنشوف examples كتير how to get the speed, بس ببساطة شديدة we find the value of distance and divided by the value of time. طيب if I have a non-uniform speed, كل اللي فات ده كان for uniform speed. طيب if a non-uniform speed, what do you expect? يلا بينا نشوف مع بعض. اللي قدامي ده اسمه بالظبط اسمه speed time graph. ليه؟ Because I have the speed on the y-axis and the time on the x-axis as usual. Time will always be on the x-axis اللي هو horizontal axis. And the other graph برضو اسمه speed time graph. بالظبط ليه؟ For the same reason. طيب both of the lines here are what? Are curved, which means that the object is not moving in a uniform speed. طيب لو كانت uniform speed كان هيبقى الجراف عامل ازاي؟ Straight line parallel to the x-axis. بالظبط كده. So this is the difference. So it's very obvious that I can see with my eyes the difference between uniform speed and non-uniform speed just by checking the graph. طيب لحد هنا it's very clear that there is a difference between the uniform speed and the non-uniform speed. وكمان it's very clear that there is a difference between distance time graph and speed time graphs. It will give me completely different results. طيب if I have zero speed or the body is at rest, the body is not moving, هنرسم الجراف ده ازاي؟ Body is not moving means that the distance does not change. Let's say مثلا a car is moving and it covered like 2 kilometers. بعد كده it didn't move any further. يبقى معنى كده as time passes the distance is fixed at 2 kilometers. So how do we draw this? بصوا كده. This is a distance time graph. خلينا نقول ان ال straight line ده واقف عند 2 kilometers. طيب is it changing? Did the car move any further? No. طيب 2 kilometers دي changed بقت 3 kilometers. ما هي لو changed يبقى في الحالة دي the car is not at rest. طيب so as time passes مهما الوقت عدي the car is standing in its place or we say at rest or stationary. فبالتالي when we try to draw the graph or draw the line we will connect all the dots اللي هم أصلا on one straight line زي ما احنا شايفين كده وال straight line ده parallel to the x-axis. So I have two graphs with the straight line parallel to the x-axis but they are totally different. واحد فيهم اللي هو speed time graph which means uniform speed لكن لو distance time graph it means that the car at rest. Huge difference. So لما بنيجي نحل problems أول حاجة أنا بعملها أنا ببص الجراف مكتوب عليه إيه؟ هل هو distance time ولا speed time؟ بس كده. يبقى الجراف اللي قدامنا ده بيبقى عبارة عن straight line parallel to the x-axis which means إن هو the car is at rest. طب ليه the car is at rest؟ لأنه ال y-axis عليه distance not speed. طيب لو جاب لي نفس الجراف ده بس ال y-axis عليه speed في الحالة دي تبقى uniform speed. تمام. So uniform أو constant speed is represented by two graphs. يا إما speed time graph as the one that we see in front of you بيبقى عبارة عن straight line parallel to the time axis or the x-axis أو another straight line between distance and time graph بس في الحالة دي passing by the origin point. Okay. Let's have a question. Which of the following graph represents the relation of the same moving object? The first one احنا قلنا أول حاجة لما بنيجي نحل الإكزامبل ده ببص الجراف مكتوب عليه إيه؟ هل هو speed time graph ولا distance time graph? So again I will read the question one more time وأنا قدامي speed time graph. So which of the following graphs represent the relation of the same moving object? يعني أنا عايزة أوصل لأنه the speed in both of the objects is the same. أنا هنا عندي this speed time graph in the question and I have three options. The first one distance time graph بس the line is parallel. The second one distance time graph the line is going up then it's parallel. The third one distance time graph بس في الحالة دي what happens? The distance is going down. So which one is the correct answer for it? Let's think together about the answer. And this is the first one, distance time graph, straight line passing by the origin point. Which two graphs are the same? Which one graph is the same as the one in the question? Yes, بالظبط كده, the distance time graph with the straight line passing by the origin point. طيب, why didn't we choose the first one? لأن معناها distance is not changing, so the car is at rest. Why didn't we choose the second one? لأن معناها في الحالة دي speed is changing. يعني في الأول كانت constant بعد كده the car has stopped. آخر واحدة represents the speed اللي هي uniform speed. So another question. Choose the correct answer. Distance time graph for a regular motion at a constant speed is a straight line parallel to the time axis. تاني كده أنا بفكر وعلى طول أفتكر في دماغي هو الجراف distance time ولا speed time؟ قال لي distance time. So لو أنا عايزة represent regular motion أو regular speed هختار مين؟ straight line parallel to the time axis ولا straight line parallel to the distance axis في حاجة اسمها كده ولا straight line passing through the origin point ولا straight line cuts the time axis and the distance axis. بالظبط, makes sense, we said it multiple times. هتبقى الانسر straight line passing by the origin points أو through the origin point. طيب, if I had the same question بس بدل ما يقولي distance time graph قال لي speed time graph كان هيبقى which one is the correct answer؟ بالظبط, the first one straight line parallel to the time axis. Both represent the same physical quantity اللي هي uniform speed. طيب, يلا بينا نفهم الكلام ده اكتر ونطلع كده نحل problems بايدينا on board ونرسم بايدينا جراف عشان نفهم ازاي نعمله. يلا بينا. طيب زي ما قلنا we will have some examples for another type of questions. في الحالة دي he's asking me to draw the graph. Draw graphical relations represents the following. The first one, body moves with regular speed. طيب هل هو هنا in this question حدد لي ان هو عايزه distance time graph ولا speed time graph؟ No. The second one, body at rest. طيب يلا بينا نرسم ال 3 graphs كده مع بعض ونشوف هو هيحتاج مني ان انا ارسمهم ازاي. اول واحده قال لي regular speed. So I have 2 ways to draw a graph that represents the regular speed. نفتكر كده مع بعض. The first one, distance time graph. So here we place the distance on the y-axis and here we place the time on the x-axis. طيب the second one, speed or speed time graph. هو قال لي ايه؟ هو قال لي regular speed او uniform speed او constant speed. اعمل ايه؟ Distance is increasing as time increases. So the line will be going like this. خليني مثلا let's imagine that this is 1 kilometer, 2 kilometers, 3 kilometers, 4 kilometers, 5 kilometers. And here's the time, 1 second, 2 second, 3 second, 4 second, 5 second. طيب at 1 kilometer it covered 1 hour. 2 kilometers, 2 hours. 3 kilometers, 3 hours. 4 kilometers, 4 hours. وبعدين لحد الآخر. طيب if we connect it between the dots here it will give me a straight line passing by. What's the name of this point? بالظبط origin point. طيب let's go to the other graph. هنا the speed is fixed. هو مثلا let's say that it's walking أو it's moving with a speed of 120 kilometers per hour. So this is the value of 120 and it's fixed as time passes. Do I need to change anything؟ ولا أي حاجة. إيه اللي هعمله؟ At the time of 1 hour it was 120. 2 hours 120 and till the end كده. Is the speed changing? No. So if I connected between these dots هتديني إيه؟ Straight line parallel to the time axis بالظبط كده. So these are the 2 types of the graphs that I can represent the regular speed of any moving object by. Okay? طيب اللي تاني request كان طالبه مني body at rest. So it means that the body is not moving at rest. Remember ايه الجراف اللي احنا قلنا to represent something that is in rest؟ طيب كان distance time graph بالظبط كده. طيب اشمعنى مش speed time graph in this case؟ Because if we drew the speed time graph in this case, it means that the body is in motion. It's moving. It has a specific or constant speed. But then the body is not moving. Let's say that the car stopped after 100 kilometers, 50 kilometers. So this is the 50 kilometers. Is it going any further زي ما أنا قلت؟ لأ. يبقى as time passes, the distance does not change. So it will also be represented by a straight line parallel to the time axis. طيب هرسم الجراف التاني كده and you compare and tell me the results. This is the speed time graph اللي عامل كده. The same shape of the graph. What is the difference between the two graphs? هنا distance time graph which means it's at rest. لكن هنا speed time graph which means that it has a constant motion أو regular motion أو regular speed. So this is the difference. طيب أنا هحط لكم الجراف التالت برضو قدامها كده علشان نعرف الفرق. لو هو distance time graph بس كده. So what does this mean؟ بالظبط regular speed. So these two graphs represent the regular speed, but this graph represents body at rest. Okay, أنا عايزة منكم إن انتوا to practice these graphs, try to draw كده these graphs، وإن شاء الله أشوفكم على خير في الحلقة اللي جاية.